that have access to the Masorah that I'm going to be sharing with you. And it's a very, very vital share. It's a very important share. It's very, very lemaisa, as we're going to see at the end in understanding what's happening today in our own personal lives. And as always, we begin with a Gemara in Brachos. This time it's Daf Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. We're learning together the Agadatas at the end of the Masechta. And this over here is a fascinating Gemara. Just to give you some background over here, you are all too young to be learning Kabbalah, with the possible exception of Reb Mike Ravinsky. But when you study, you don't have to learn like Zohar. You can just learn the secondary texts. And you'll know that the topic that I'm about to bring up, this Gemara over here, is one of the major foundation sugyas that we have. In other words, if you want to understand how the world was created, if you want to understand the basic concept of spheros and how Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and you want to know where do you begin when studying it in the Gemara, so it's actually the creation of the woman, it's creation of Isha, of the feminine power of the female, is where everything actually begins. So let's actually see this inside over here. If you have a look at the Samach Aleph, Amud Aleph, you go a few lines down to the first two dots where it says, Darash Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, Mai Dichsiv, Vayitzar Hashem Elokim Esa Adam. Kadosh Baruch Hu formed, Hashem Elokim formed man, Bishnei Yudim. So the word Vayitzar, which means to form in the Torah, comes with two yuds. Says the Gemara, Bishnei Yudim, Shnei Yitzarim bar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man with two Yitzers, Yetzer Tov, Echad Yetzer Tov, Ve'echad Yetzer Hara. So this is pretty much well known that the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov compete inside of man, and therefore man was created with two yuds. Vayitzer, Hashem formed man with two yuds. The first yud is the Yetzer HaTov, the second yud is the Yetzer Hara. Maskiv la Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak attacks this viewpoint. Ela ma'ata behema. What about an animal? Delay kasiba vayitza. The creation of the animal kingdom did not come with two-letter yuds, and nevertheless, less the yitzra. Don't we see that they don't have a yetzer hara? V'kachzinam demaska v'nashka ubata. We look at the animal kingdom, and we see that they are mazik, they create damage, they bite, they kick. So those of you who have animals will know that an animal can have theoretically a bad day. If you own your own little pet bull and you catch him on a bad day, it will create damage. It will have a temper tantrum. So we see that the animal kingdom also has this negative power of being mazik, to be able to cause damage. Ella, so the Gemara answers, Rav Shimon ben Pazi, the Amar of Shimon ben Pazi, Oili miyitzri, Oili miyitzri. So Rav Shimon ben Pazi says, what does it mean that man has two yetzer haras? So the Gemara says, Oili miyitzri, Oili miyitzri. Now, it's not today's class to talk about this, but there's a famous Rashi over here. It's quoted by the Bali Musar. Oili miyitzri, im elech acha yitzri. If I follow my yitzri, my yetzer hara, so my creator is angry with me. V'im lo elech achrav, if I don't go after my yitzara, oili mi yitzri, so my yitzara gets upset with me, hamiyagieni b'harim, who will tire me out with constant negative thoughts. So this is something incredible. It's not today's class, which is something fascinating to think. It's basically what we say in English, every way, which way you go, you lose, meaning that the two yetzaharas compete inside of you. When you do what's right, so your yetzer hara makes you feel exhausted, overwhelmed. You're constantly looking for the next possible yetzer hara, and then you have to fight it. But if you fall for the yetzer hara, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is upset with you, and you have to deal with the consequences of listening to your yetzer hara. Every way you look at it, mankind is always in trouble. That is, I know some of you guys are thinking, yeah, sounds like marriage, but the point is, that's the way these things work. That's the way this world is like. What I wanted to share with you is that the real story that's going on behind the scenes, what Rosh Shimon ben Pazi is teaching us is that there's a fundamental difference between the animal kingdom and humanity. Humanity, what we do has consequences. That is the key point being made over here, is that there's consequences. The animal kingdom, unfortunately, animals do not have a Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, meaning they have no schar, they have no onesh. It is wrong to say that an animal is good or bad. Animals follow their instincts. The truth is, all animals are good. So when you see a pit bull that attacks a human being, the animal is not bad. The owner is bad. Animals, if you leave them on their own, are always, by definition, good. Only human beings have a good and a bad that leads to consequences. Unfortunately, for the animal kingdom, they don't have reward. In other words, in the world of Olam Haba, there's nothing. It is something we've spoken out over here a few times, that the Chidah says that animals like cows and sheep, they speak with the letter mem, right? They go meh. Okay, the letter mem is the middle letter in the alphabet, because the letter mem has no past and no future. It's always in the present. So that is discussing the animal kingdom versus the human kingdom. That is not today's discussion. Today's discussion is the next line. Continues the Gemara and says, gives Inami, another answer to understanding the two yuds. This is really what I wanted to get to. Kid Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, the Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, du partzufim, two faces, bara HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'adam harishon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created with the Adam harishon, the first Adam, the first man, with two faces. Now the word Adam, as you all know, was not created as a male name. Today, Adam is normally a name of a male, but the original Adam was not male. The original Adam was human and had on one side a male face, on the other side a female face. Shenema achar v'kidem tzarantani. It brings a pasuk in Tehillim. God, you formed me, both directions. Achar, backwards. Kidem, frontward. You formed me male and female, and therefore the word Adam, which means created from Adama or Adamele Elyon, as the Shla said, the creature that can be earth-like or animal-like, was created du partzufim, with two faces, male in the front and female in the back. What that means is that there was no back. It means that what we call the achar, the back, was really, if you would see it, you would see the feminine dimension of God's creation. And if you looked at it from the front, you would see the masculine dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation. Do not try and visualize this. I beg you, do not try and visualize this. Remember that Adam, before the sin, stretched from one end of the world to the other end of the world. He had just been freshly created. If you would go back in a time machine, which Eitan could probably invent for you, if you went back in a time machine and went back into the Garden of Eden and you had a look at this Adam that was male on one side and female on the other, I promise you, hand in my chimoshim over here, you would see nothing. You would see absolutely nothing. The bottom line is, this is how everything begins. Then the Gemara continues and says something crazy. Vayiben Hashem lakim esatzela. He quotes the pasuk in Bereshis, Rav v'Shmuel, a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Ama Partzuf v'Chad Ama Zanov. When Hashem created Moshe, could you put everyone on mute? That's me. Thank you. If I could just, again, when Hashem created the female, so it says there's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. One says that the female was created from the face of Adam, which is the way we just learned it, you and I. And the other is that she was created from the tail. It doesn't tell us who it was, which Rav and Shmuel, it doesn't say who said what. I'm probably guessing, because if we found out, that person would get in trouble when he went home to his Rebbitzin. I see that we were created from the tail. Does not sound very good. What exactly does it mean? So just before we even begin it is important to say the following words very, very clearly, that the Rishonim go out of their way to tell us that the tail is not something literal. Both the Aruch under the word Zanav, and the Shuvas HaRashba, there's a section, on the Agadices of the Rashba on this Gemara, and they go out of their way to tell us that you should know that the Zanav does not literally mean a tail, but rather it means the extremity of the human being, meaning that furthest point from the moach, from the world where you have what's called the intellect. At the other end, you have the Zanav. Now that clearly needs to be explained on a deeper level, but the bottom way is that you have over here that the Sifrei Kodesh say it this way, that the creation of the woman either comes from the face or comes from the tail, which means either it is the opposite of the male from the face, in other words, front versus back, or the opposite, meaning head versus the other end. In other words, either way you look at it, the female is the opposite of the male. But the question is, how is she the opposite? Is it back versus front or top versus bottom? That's the way the Sfarim bring down that there's a machlokus over here. Obviously, we need to understand this on a deeper level, which we're about to do. Obviously, I have to take you a little bit into the world of Panemius, which we're about to do. I'm going to do it in a way that every single one of us will understand this, Be'ezus Hashem, clearly. But let me summarize everything we need to know for the next part of the class where it gets a little bit complicated. What we have learned today that we need to know for the rest of the shir is the following. There's a machlokas in the Gemara between Rav and Shmuel about the creation of what was called the power of the female creation. We all agree that male and female are opposites, but how are they opposites? One says that one is the front and one is the back, the male is the front and the female is the back, and the other one says that the male is the top and the female is the bottom. Either way, this is something that, again, for the ladies that are listening, you cannot leave the class now, because it is literally offensive the way I say it right now, but we all understand that these things are Kodesh Kedoshim. These ideas are the holiest of the holiest. As we go and see, they hit the nerve cord of how creation unfolded at the very beginning, and there's massive consequences, not just in Jewish thought, but also, as we're going to see soon, in understanding how Avodah Zarah unfolded and how it affects Western civilization all the way to the newspaper headlines of today. So let's start in the beginning of the beginning. I'm going to teach you something. If you've never heard these ideas before, trust me, I'm giving them to you as simply as I can. And if you don't fully understand them, do not worry. These ideas take years to settle on you, because these are the most deepest ideas in understanding how creation actually works. Some of you who went to yeshivas or seminaries will remember hearing the following classic line from Yeshua Leib Chasman: what is the furthest distance between 2 points? We all know the closest distance is a straight line. What is the furthest distance between 2 points? So the answer they like to give is between the head and the heart, which we say is the world of the intellect and the world of emotions. How true is that? Every person that's listening knows through their own pain how many times has their intellect said one thing and their heart says another thing, and they have to figure out how to reconcile. That is in the world of Musar, in the world of Panemius, in the world of the holy, holy books. When we talk about what is the furthest distance between 2 points, the answer is as follows, and listen very carefully. Do not worry, I will explain myself. The longest distance between 2 points in the world of deep, deep thought is between the number 1 and the number 2. The hardest journey to understand is how something can leave the number 1 and enter into what's called the world called number 2. The distance from 1 to 2 is an incomprehensible infinity of complex ideas that need to be understood. Let's understand what I just said by giving example after example until you start to see that the pattern is unfolding over here. Those of you that heard my class on Seder night, which I gave, oh my gosh, I live in Corona's land. Time and space ceases to exist. I don't even know how many months ago was Pesach. Was it 100 years ago? But whenever it was, I gave a class here on this Thursday night, and I mentioned the following words. The end of Seder night is where all the secrets of Kabbalah slip out, what the rabbis basically say, at this point now, you're sufficiently drunk that we can teach you all the deepest ideas of the deepest ideas. And one of them is we learn how to count from 1 to 13. I have a book called Brachos B'Cheshbon by Rav Shimshon Pinkus. It's a book, it's a tiny little book that goes through that poem and teaches you how to count from 1 to 13. I remember when I was maybe in my 20s, I heard a two-part series from Rav Moshe Shapiro. Zatzal, he went through the counting system. Let's count to 3, okay? My dear friends, let's count to 3. One is Hashem, one is Hashem, one is Hashem from the heaven of the case. So that's a no-brainer. The question is, how can anything come after the number 1? 1 is Hashem. When we say in the Shema, Hashem Echad, means everything is ultimately Hashem. How can something leave Hashem? Which is really asking the question, how did God create the world? Because before creation, there was 1. And after there was creation, there was, well, I guess, ultimately, there's you and I. We take up space, don't we? We take up space. We're independent. We think. We can anger Hashem, and we can make him happy. We can hate him. We can love him. He loves us. He can be angry with us. How did that happen? How did out of 1 is Hashem, suddenly something else happened? So this is the mother of all questions without being cliched at all. This is the ultimate question. So the answer is, if you want to know how it works out in a good way, you go back to Har Sinai, when Moshe went up to heaven and got from God 2, right? Meaning he got the luchos, which is shtayim miyodea, the luchos. The idea of the luchos is the great side, the great secret, that something can come home from heaven. My Rebbe Rav Moshe Peor used to always say, everyone here at some point has studied the 13 principles of Maimonides, the Rambam. One is the belief in Torah min hashamayim, that Torah comes from heaven. If you ask the average scholar, what do you actually believe in? The answer is that we believe that we have something, a book called the Chumash, the Sefer Torah, that comes from God himself. No, that's not that's not what's happening. It's the idea that we can hold inside of ourselves. I can take over here a Chumash, Bereshis, and I can say this originally comes from a place called the number 1, and I have access to it in the world of the number 2. How does that work? That's the belief. That's the animam in B'emunah Shalema, that Moshe brought down luchos, the number 2, from that place called the number 1. Eventually, we realized that all things connected to the number 2 are naturally unstable. The world of the number 2 is not a good world. The world of number 2 is always searching for the number 3, where it finds stability. 1 and then the number 2 is something unnatural. It's something that cannot stand on its own unless it does one of 2 things. It either finds a healthy home or it expresses itself in some form of evil distortion. The number 2 is always a problem because it came out of perfection. And anything that leaves by perfection, by definition, is no longer perfect. Some of you will remember that the number 11 has its own problems, because 10 is also a perfect number. So 11, 11 has its own problems. So the number 2 is the first number in numbering systems that has problems. If you hold on to the luchos, so eventually you get to the number 3, which is the avos, and then the imahos, and all kinds of good things. But the journey from the luchos 2, 3 are the forefathers is the idea that we can give the number 2 stability. We give it a home, the home of the avos and then the imahos, where it can express itself and the number 2 can flourish the way that it's supposed to do inside the bias, the Eshel Avram, and eventually the Eshel of Avram and Sarah Imenu, which is the numbers 3 and 4. That's how 2 can have stability. So the bottom line is that what we need to do. So again, Moshe Friedman asked the fact that the luchos are connected to each other. Because I'm secretly looking at the clock, I'm not going to give a full answer to what the luchos are. The luchos are, just to give you, this is for Rav Moshe, just to give you just a thought, that when Eliezer gave Rivka Imenu tzmidim, okay, tzmidim, 2 bracelets, and Rashi says they're connected the luchos, the right and the left. So the right one was connected Terah, was connected bein Adam lemakom. The left one was connected bein Adam lechavero, which ultimately is also male and female, which is completely off topic. But those tzmidim is the idea that Rivka Imenu had the ability to take the 2 luchos and bring it down and put them together as the home of what would become Yitzchak and Rivka Imenu. She would build that bias, and she would connect the 2 tzmidim. She'd put them together in a healthy way. The word samid, which means the bracelet, also comes from the word samud, things that work together that become one. Let us go back now and give other examples where you see that the number 1 is always the pre-existing perfection. When you enter 2, everything's unstable, and then 3 brings it back together. Another example is the first 3 days of creation. Day number 1, the word echad means it is one, like the same echad that we say in the Shema, the same echad that Rabbi Akiva screamed out, the same echad that we say in Adon Olam, that oneness is the world of perfection where everything is one. But then, the second day of creation, you suddenly notice that the word of Tov is missing. The word Tov is missing, Vayar Hashem, Ki Tov, because the world of the second day was left unstable, incomplete. And that's why in the second day, all of evil was created. The Sultan was created in the second day. Gehenna was created in the second day. Literally, all hell was let loose on the second day because it was unstable. On the third day, we had the word Ki Tov twice, because the second day found a home when HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as you know, split the waters, and the waters were no longer evil waters. The waters now had a place that they could function in a healthy way. They had a bayit. That bayit happened on the third day, and that's why so many of us have the custom to build our home on the third day. On a Tuesday, you get married, because that's the perfect day that the unstable second day will find a home together with the third day and live happily ever after. Another example, I'm only giving this example because we learned this together about a month ago. We spoke about the river, the kettle, and the bird. Remember that class? Fire and water are examples of the number 2 that is intrinsically unstable. Fire and water begs for the number 3, which is what? It's a kettle. When you have a kettle, so then everything can find a home. And the kettle is the bias for fire and water that allows it to become stable. And some of you may remember that when I gave that class, I quoted Rav Hutner. My Rebbe Moshe Peor heard this directly from him. It's such a great line. It's such a great line. He says that a guta is a noyef, a fruma is a retzeach, a was darf man sein, gut and frum. Let me just translate that for you, for those who are Yiddishly challenged. Okay, a person who is too much, who's good. Good means you belong to the right side of the spectrum. Tzad Yamin, the world of chesed, which is to the right. If you're too much to the right, so you will become expressed as a distorted, like Yishmael, you'll get into znus, into immoral behavior. To the left-hand side, I just realized you're watching me from the opposite. This is my left, okay? So that is the Esav world. That is the world of the tzad small, of the negative side of tzad small. So if you distort that, you have Esav. So again, Yamin and small is Chesed and Gvura. Chesed can theoretically be good if you do it right. Gvura is theoretically good if you do it right, like Avram and Yitzchak, but it offers the possibility of distortion which was Yishmael and Esav. So what should you be? Good and from, balances. Put everything together in a healthy way. Make sure that it works. Make sure that they have what was Yaakov Avinu, who had 12 sons that were all perfect. Make sure that the power of Avram and the power of Yitzchak does not get distorted by having the balanced world of Yaakov Avinu. And then the others are complete. That's the Chut HaMashulash. That's the three steps. Avram and Yitzchak together is that unstable duality. Comes Yaakov, Tiferes, harmony, Emes, everything comes together with Yaakov Avinu. That is another example. So let me just take a little shlook over here, because now the class is about to get very interesting. Quick summary. The number one is, by definition, the world of perfection. It's Hashem's world. The number one does not need anything else. The first day of creation was not called Rishon, it was called Echad. It was perfect in every way. Anything that leaves the world of Echad is unstable. The world of twos is always unstable. Somebody probably had it on their Sheva Brachos, right? The Sheva Brachos. If you have one-on-one, male and female on their own, it's unstable. You put in the third, which is Hashem, into the house, so then the Eish becomes Ish and Isha. Somebody probably had that their Sheva Brachos. The number two in Jewish thought is always on its own a problem. He's always searching for the number three. So what we need to know for today is I have to say this again. None of the ladies can leave until I explain myself. I'm going to say a statement. None of the ladies allowed to leave until I explain what I just said. And whenever you have the number two, 1 and 2, the second one is always called feminine, nukva. Nukva literally means the feminine power. So that world, called the world of the number two, is intrinsically unstable, is the world of the feminine world, which can be channeled in the right way or channeled in the wrong way, which means that what we called a male on his own is leitayv adam liyaskubar. A male on his own is useless. He needs a female, but you have a female. At that point, then everything is looking for step number 3. What's going to happen? You put a male with a female, then the zivug, the combination of male and female, is looking for what we call a bias. Step number 3, where they all live happily ever after. If you don't have a bias, what do you have? You have the zivug that is illegal, that you and I call znus. In other words, all of immoral behavior is step number 2 without a bias. Let me say that slowly, that we understand this very, very, very clearly. The number 2, I'm ready to bring it down into a world that you and I can identify with. A male and a female together. If you give them a bias, if you put them under a chuppah, b'kedusha, b'tzahara, and the man says hariyat mekudeshesli, and everything is the way it's supposed to, they have a bias. So that is, it's not just everything is now normal. That is what Hashem wanted. That is the world of perfection that Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. So that 1-on-1 equals a bias. So that is, the world has been transformed into Kedusha. But without that bias, that's what's called the whole of Sefer Mishlei. The whole of Sefer Mishlei talks about this again and again. Klal Yisrael, and there is feminine, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is masculine. So Klal Yisrael is called Isha Zayna Chasalev. All these psukim in Mishlei, that when Klal Yisrael does not have a home, so we go off into foreign worlds and we act like a Zaina. We act, the word Zaina means something that's gone astray, something's unstable, it doesn't have a bias. That Sefer Mishlei is filled with all these pictures. Tonight, we're gonna talk about, tomorrow night for you guys, Eishes Chayil. That's the Eishes Chayil, that's Shabbos Kodesh, the Chadei Likras Kala, that has found a home, which is Shabbos Kodesh. So whenever you have this unstable thing, the feminine world, when I use the word feminine, don't think of your wives or your future wife. Think about the feminine power that Hashem put in the world, is the world of number 2. is looking to be brought into a bias, and then everything is Kodesh Kadash, everything's the way it's exactly supposed to be. Everything is like the Kruvim in the Holy of Holies. It is the way that things are supposed to be. But Chas v'Shalom, you do not have that bias. If it's left in its unstable thing, so that's when everything falls apart. That's the world of Znus. That's the world of instability. The bottom line is that if you ask the woman in your life, let me rephrase that. If you take a random woman in this world and you ask her, is she a good number two or a bad number two? The answer is it's in her hands, which means, let me go back to the beginning of creation. The Chet of Adam Harishon began dafka with a woman. And again, this is the Chava at that point then was unfathomably holy, but she fell for the seduction of the snake. So the female brought in the znus, this immoral behavior, as we know, came with it. The znus that went on with Chava and the snake is what literally destroyed the whole world. It began with Chava, but the same female is what the Torah teaches us. Those of you 2 weeks ago we learned about the Chet HaMeraglim. The Chet HaMeraglim, the women did not sin with the Chet HaMeraglim, and in their schus we got a home called the land of Israel. So the same female, when you get it right, which was the women in the Midbar, with the Chet HaMeraglim, which is Tisha B'Av, which is coming up before we know it, in 4 weeks. This time in 4 weeks, we're going to be sitting on the ground crying. Women should not be sitting on the ground. They're only sitting on the ground because of the menfolk this time. But they were the ones that says, no, let's anchor this into the bias called Eretz Yisrael. They did not accept the Lashon Hara against the Jewish home, which is the land of Israel. So there you see the word, this nukva, this feminine power. When you get it right, you have everything that Hashem wanted. When you get it wrong, you've got everything Hashem does not want. So the bottom line is, just by the way, my Rebbe Revolba, in 2 places in Ali Shar, he says that's the oimek of the bracha sh'asani kirtzainai. A woman says, you made me like your will. Your will, says the woman every morning, is that the battleground should be the feminine dimension of creation. The battleground is down here on earth, which is feminine. The alma dibra kuruse, the world that you created, called you Hashem's rotzon, is that the feminine dimension is where the action is. And in a sense, a woman celebrates that. Because I have the ability to fix everything. When I get it right, the woman says, I bless you, Hashem, sh'asani kirtzainai. This crazy world of the number 2 is also exciting. No one wants to watch the part of the movie where they all lived happily ever after. That's boring. That's it. The Harry Potter series ended with the Battle of Hogwarts. After that, it's boring. Okay, so you want to know about the Shidduchim, so she wrote a little extra thing, who got married to who. But that's it. You always have every epic story at the end of the Lord of the Rings, Eitan. So what happens? It's boring. Who cares about what they did to the Shire? It's over with. You want the big battles. That's it. So the action happens on the feminine dimension of creation. So I just want to throw this in without being too explicit. Today, you see that one of the great tumas of the Dar before Mashiach comes is the tumah that we no longer know what is male and what is female. In other words, again, I can't say this explicitly, only because I like my job too much, but stop and think about what I'm saying. If you don't know what it means to be female or what it means to be male, so you can never take it to step number 3 and have a bias. The idea of a home, I'm talking for Jew and non-Jew, is that a male plus a female equals a bias. You can only create a bias when you have a female who's not a distortion. So the tumah of what we see today, amongst all the other problems that they come with, is that, I think this is their month, if I'm not mistaken, is that they created with pride something that has no hemshech. It can never get to step number 3. That's the tumah, is that it cannot reach the world of number 3. I'm saying something very deep. Again, I'm talking about their ideology, chas v'shalom. I'm not talking about the people themselves. The people, we have to give them infinite love and infinite respect and reach out to them. But what I'm saying is that their ideology is that you have this unstable number two perpetuated with all the colors of the rainbow. This is the problem of that world, is that it cannot bring to the number three. It cannot come to the world of a proper hemshech. Now, the zivug, when it's done properly, you've got everything. My Rebbe Rosh Pur used to say things like, it's hard to us to fathom, but Moshe Rabbeinu, the Melech HaMashiach, they come from a zivug. It's the most incredible thing. No two human beings are ever alike. Every husband and wife create, like God, something unique and special that never was and never will be. It is unfathomable when you think about the concept of a marriage. The idea of a male and a female create, like God, something that does not exist. The animal kingdom can only reproduce themselves like a photocopying machine. I'm sorry to say this. An animal can never have a name. Okay, you can give your pet a name, but know that your pet does not have a name. The name of your pet is Kelev, is Chatul, that's it. And Kelev marries Kelev and has Kelev. That's all it is, from the beginning of time to the end of time. Only human beings can have. Yitzchak has a zivug with Rivka and they create Yaakov Avinu. This is something, and Yaakov is completely different. So that is the Aimek and the bottom line of what we believe in. Now I want to get into the hard part of the class. We all know there's a thing called Avodah Zarah. So Avodah Zarah is very hard for us to understand. What exactly is Avodah Zarah? Already in the times of the Talmud, no one understood Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Rav Ashi used to make fun of Menashe, the king of Israel, that followed Avodah Zarah. When you think of Avodah Zarah, you think of whatever, you bow down to some statue, you put whatever, you put fruit on its belly button, and you say, this is God. And you say, Señora Loco, these people are crazy, what are they thinking? Menashe tells Rav Ashi, if you had lived in my time, you would have ran to the nearest Avodah Zarah to bow down. Avodah Zarah is a real tumah in this world. It is incredibly powerful. Today, the nearest we can do is think about our Yetzer Hara for Znus. Znus makes no sense. Znus is irrational, but we all know how it takes a hold of us. Everyone knows it's stupid, that if you want to buy a truck, the way they sell trucks, a Mack truck, they put a female, they dress her as close as possible to Chava before the Chet, and they say, now you're going to buy it. And everyone knows it's stupid, but everyone falls for it. Everyone knows. We have some of you, I see over here, one of you who works with Hollywood. So you know, you put this dimension into anything, into Wheel of Fortune, whatever it may be. You put a little bit of this in, you add this little spice, and then people are buying. Why? It makes no sense. The Gemara says, when the first female was presented to the first male, it's the Gemara right over here. Hashem shows Adam Rishon, look at this without skin. The first thing you see, imagine you take up the skin and say, this is disgusting, this is gross, this is beyond belief. Again, I don't want to think about this, but all of us, if you think about what we are a few days after we die, that's it. What's the big Yetzer Hara? What are you doing when you have a beautiful marriage and you look at something you shouldn't be looking at? So all these things gives us a taste of what was Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah was a Yetzer Hara that was so powerful. To us, it makes no sense. When we talk about Avodah Zarah, the first thing that comes into our mind is the classic Avodah Zarah of the Rambam. Now, I have over here my handy Rambam over here, and this Rambam over here begins the laws of Avodah Zarah with something that we're all familiar with. How did Avodah Zarah begin? I'm going to read this very quickly. Bimei Enosh, the third generation after creation. Adam, Shes, Enosh, the first pasuk in Divrei Yamim. Enosh, third generation. They had a big mistake. V'nivara atzas chachmi oisa adar. The wise men of that generation. Va'enosh atzmai min atayim. It's hard to us to imagine. Enosh, whose grandpa was Adam Rishon, and he knew that Adam Rishon was created by God. What did they used to do? They thought, they looked at the stars and they looked at the constellations and they realized that God himself had given them honor because look how high they are. Look how powerful they are. And then, as he goes on to say, the Rambam goes on to say in great detail, I'm looking at the clock, I don't want to spend time on this, but classic Avodah Zarah is that they saw that since the king gave honor to the princes must be powerful in their own right. And therefore, all the great powers of nature, the sun and the moon and the stars and the constellations, and then after that, as the Rambam says, the mountain ranges and the waterfalls, and then eventually even things like trees, anything that gave and anything that man felt dependent on, that became it. They all knew that this was not God, but they started worshiping it until eventually they forgot about God himself, and the intermediary became the new source. The Rambam ends famously, and this continued generation and generation until al derech zeh ha'olam isgalgal got worse and worse. Ad sheneilad amudai, that great pillar, shel ha'olam of the whole universe, shu Avram Avinu, Eitan Gadol, he called that great powerful person, Adam Rishon, Avram Avinu. He turned the tide back, and he brought everything back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that is classic Avodah Zarah. But there's another Avodah Zarah out there, my dear friends, that we find in this week's parsha. The craziest Avodah Zarah. The first Avodah Zarah, you get it, okay? We actually say it in the Shema. It's called Elohim Acherim. Elohim means a fake God. There's no such thing as Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the creator of this world. There's only one creator. Everyone knew that. There's no Yud Kei Vav Kei Acherim. Elohim, which is how Hashem runs the world, and Hashem is, and that's Elohim Acherim. You start to see a distortion in the world. The way that God runs the world. Step 2, which is God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's Hashem Echad. That never had a problem in history. But Hashem Echad running the world, which is step 2, you have Elikim and then Elohim Acherim. You have the distortion. That is where all the problems begin. But it's another one, and that's in this week's parsha. At the end of the parsha, Bilam gives the worst, most destructive advice in all of history that brought Klal Yisrael more than ever to tsaras until today, is the advice of that evil man called Bilam. The pasuk says, "Vayeshev Yisrael b'shittim." This is, of course, I'm reading from chapter 25 at the very beginning, at the very end of this week's parsha. Klal Yisrael is in a place called Shittim. The word Shittim literally means, Shita means something right, but Shittim also comes from the word Shtus. The word Shittim is connected to the number 2. Vayachal ha'am liznais. Everything begins with znus. This Avodah Zarah begins with immoral behavior, znus. With who? With B'nais Moav. Moav, Gematria 49, has all the 49 levels of tumah, impurity. Everything that is the distortion of this world is found in Moav. What happens next? Vatikren ala'am lezifrei Eloheihem. They get invited to bow down to their gods. Vayochel ha'am, I like to say, in the end, the Jew needs food. Without food, you're not going to get him. This is my own addition, right? There's got to be food somewhere in the Chay, because that's what we Jews do. Vayishtachavu alehem, and then we bow down to their gods. Now, this is talking about the Am. The Am is always the Erev Rav. Look at the third pasuk. Vayitzamed Yisrael leBaal Peor. Where are you, Reb Michal Friedman? Here you have the word Vayitzamed, coming close. Yisrael, this is the Heilige Yidden now. This is Klal Yisrael. This is Shevet Shimon. The Baal Peor. By the way, Shevet Shimon is which tribe? You can do this. Ruvain is number 1. There we go, Reb David Hertzman. Thank you. It's the second tribe. Shimon is tribe number 2. He comes along, and he bows down to Baal Peor. Says Rashi. Rashi says, if you want to know what Baal Peor is all about, put on your safety belts over here. Shapayarim lefana pita bas. So the very, very end of the food system, it starts up in the mouth. Where does it end? That part, mitzi and re, it comes out with fecal matter, and that is what you place on the avodah zarah. You put this on the avodah zarah. Now we're talking about Klal Yisrael. Hashem gets angry. Oh my gosh, v'yichaf Hashem b'Yisrael. And 24,000 Jews are about to die now of Shevet Shimon. The man that perpetuated this sin was a man called Zimri. He cuts everything down like Zimri. He cuts everything down. Who was Zimri? Zimri was the head of the tribe of Shimon, the second tribe. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us he was one of his real name was Shlumiel ben Tzurish. He was one of the 12 princes that we read about in Parshas Naso. It's crazy. Yeah, Jeremy, 100% correct. Exactly right. This is that Moshe Rabbeinu never reconciled with Shevet Shimon. Right into Vizos HaBracha, Shimon has a problem. But Shimon over here, the number 2 Shimon, gets lost and gets attached itself to Moab. The Gemara brings down that Zimri had a name, Shol ben Aknanis. Shol ben Aknanis means that his father was Shimon and his mother was Dinah. You do the math, he was 250 years old. Zimri was at least 250 years old at this time now. His mother was Dinah, his father was Shimon himself. This man, Zimri, a 250-year-old man, gets sucked in to the Bnei Moab. And how does he do the avodah? He goes to the bathroom over this avodah zarah. And you read this and you say, this is the craziest avodah zarah. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a sun, it's not a moon. It's not something that you look up. It's on the contrary, this is the lowest of the lowest. How on earth can we understand this? Not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu excuse the expression, is freaked out by this whole thing. He gets buried. This is in V'zayis HaBracha, Mul Beis Peor. Rashi brings down the Varim Lamed Daled, Pasuk Vav. Moshe Rabbeinu is buried. He needs to keep his eye on Baal Peor. Kavru Kvivra Yamuchan Sham Mesheshis Mebreshis L'Chapel Ma'aseh Peor, which the Mefarshim explain. On the 6th day of creation, the Shabbos comes in. The burial place of Moshe Rabbeinu opposite Peor. Peor is so dangerous, it's so powerful, it's so scary that Moshe Rabbeinu says, I need to be buried nearby. In other words, I need to keep an eye on what's going on to help out Klal Yisrael. So now comes the most dangerous and most frightening and most craziest part of this class. And if you've never heard this beforehand, you may want to sit down because you may start hyperventilating. I'm not exaggerating. If you think I'm exaggerating, you tell me in 2 minutes if I'm exaggerating. The Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he lived in Padua. This is 2.5 centuries ago. He writes in his Sefer Adim B'Maro, Chelik Beis, Mama Bir Zay Malachim. He says the Tumah of Baal Peor, the Tumah of Baal Peor expressed itself in its full power for the last 2,000 years as a religion that has its capital in Italy, in the Vatican. The religion of Baal Peor in its full power is Christianity. This is what he writes. This is what he writes over here. This is the Ramchal. I'm just quoting an Italian rabbi who lived in Catholic Italy, in Padua, and he writes that you see this is correct because how was their leader, Oisa Ha'ish, that man, how was he punished? So you all know the story. We love this as kids. Onkelos Hager, before he converts, he goes and sort of brings him down and says, how are you being punished? And Oisa Ha'ish answers, Tsoya Ratachas, in burning feces. I am placed in this world of feces. Eitan will give you an emoji for this. This is it. This is the Gemara in Gittin. Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. It's a Gemara in Gittin that brings down that this is Mida Keneged Mida, says the Ramchal. You are the one that brought Tzoa into this world, into the four corners of this world, as we're going to explain in a moment what that means. And therefore you're punished Mida Keneged Mida in Tzoa. So let's understand what this means. I once taught this to you. This is from the student of the Ramchal, Ramesha David Valley, that what is the idea of a Christian cross? So Ramesha David Valley says Nimrod was the first person to have his army had this cross. The cross is a line that goes from top to bottom. Top is the number 1, bottom is the number 3. Top is the Hashem's world of clarity, where Hashem Echad, and number 3 is at the bottom of the bottom, is down here in this world. They put a line like this. Upstairs, you can have your Hashem Echad, but down here, we run the show. We're in control. It's all about us. So what it means is that to understand what they did was they had a problem. They're under the line. We're in control. The Avodah Zarah, the Tzumah of Isa Ha'ish, was to say the following thing. Humanity has flaws. What are we going to do if we want to make ourselves that down here we are the new God? We are the new Elohim Achirim. How do we do that? How do we make man to God? So we will take that part of man that symbolizes the lowest of the human experience, and we'll make that into what we worship. In other words, worshiping your feces is the ultimate male self-worship. The ultimate in putting man on a pedestal, that seeing even that what comes out of us that is negative and lowly and disgusting, that we will worship. That is exactly what we will worship. It's funny because I'm British, so I feel I have to say this. We all know that Lashon HaKodesh has 10 words for tefillah, 10 words for neshama, 10 words for anything holy. The Italians have 10 words for pasta. And apparently the Eskimos have 10 words for snow. Well, the British have 10 words for toilet. I don't know how we manage. It's a lowly culture. Okay, anyone want to go to the loo? Okay, we don't even use the word bathroom. We just call it toilet. It's who we are. It's a lowly culture. And we worship this. The idea of worshiping this means that part of us that creates a bad smell, which ultimately is what happens when we die, which is the ultimate stench. We will make that into something noble. We will make that into something glamorous. We will uplift it. We will turn this into an avoda. The essence of this whole tumah is that part of us that shows our weakness and our lowliness, we will give it glamour and make it powerful. That is the essence of the tumah of Isa Ish, of that religion that you and I live in. It began with a woman, says the Ramchal, called Cosby Bastsur in this week's parsha. The first Christian was Cosby Bastsur, the Midianite princess. She was the original, the source of all this tumah. Says the Ramchal, listen to the holy words of the Ramchal. Tsur, Cosby Bastsur. Tsur means a rock. That rock is Hashem. That rock is the number 1. Tsur Chayenu, the immutable rock, is Hashem himself. Cosby comes from the word koizev, kola'an, which means falsehood. Cosby means I will distort the journey from God. Cosby Bastsur is the number 2, will distort the number 1. I will make glamorous the lowliest of everything we have around us. Now, if you have Cosby Bastsur, so obviously what comes to the third step is going to be a chefsa of evil and distortion. Says the Ramchal, that's the Trinity. That's the Trinity. Is that the 1 and the 2 is a distorted 3. So I want to say this again. I'm running out of time. Tonight, when you go to sleep, you say the Shema. You say Shema Yisrael. Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem, Echad, they're all one. So what does that mean? Hashem is the number 1. The second Hashem is the number 3. But the number 2 is Elokeinu. That's where all the problems are. Elohim Acherim. So we say Shema is Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Echad, everything is one. That's our emunah. That's the foundation of our belief. That's what the Shema is all about. That's why we give our lives up on the Shema. But those evil Rishonim, they say no. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem. There's a Trinity. It's Echad. Chas v'shalom. That's the tzuma of what they're saying. Now, the Ramchal says the craziest thing ever. Now, it's almost funny if it wouldn't be so terrifying. He says the greatest proof that what I'm saying is right is one of the centerpieces of their theology is a difficult a confessional. Confessional and Baal Peor is one and the same. Instead of going to the toilet on an idol, you go to a priest and you confess all your tsoah, all your feces. You go out and you say, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Get it out. Instead of coming out from one end, it comes out of your mouth, but it's the same tsoah. And the priest says, you are absolved. You're forgiven, my child. That's it. That is a Baal Peor moment. It's an interesting thing for those of you that love history like me. There was a period in the beginning of the 16th century, in 1517, a man called Pope Leo X. He needed to fundraise. The Pope was bankrupt. So he says, you know what? You pay up front. Before you sin, I already forgive you. So this is it. It's called indulgences. These indulgences mean that all these Christians in Europe were sending money to Rome so that they could cheat on their wives tomorrow. Right up front. Now, interesting thing is that one person saw through this. His name was Martin Luther. Yamach Shemo, Martin Luther. This is how the Protestant Reformation began, when they saw the hypocrisy and they saw the deep cynicism and how this thing worked. But of course, the Protestants created their own problems. But there's nothing more deeply expressive of every Baal Peor than this idea is that you pay for the sins, you give it to the priest, and then it's gone. That's Avodah Zarah. That's the tumah of Baal Peor that begins with Cosby, Basur, and ends up in this money you pay up front before you cheat on your wife, or before you kill, or before you steal. Now, what about the Protestant America of today? I'm going to say this fast only because it's so uncomfortable to talk about these things. And I know that I'm sitting here in my bunker in Har Nof, but at one point I want to get back to JFK. I'm going to say this. What they do is, their Baal Peor is a Sunday morning box, which you see in every street corner. The Sunday morning they go, and afterwards they leave, they can do what they want. It's what they do. That Baal Peor is put into a little thing. Unfortunately, sometimes you see Yidden do that on a Saturday morning box. But that's where it comes from. It's a Baal Peor moment. You let out your religious needs, then afterwards you can do what you want. In its extreme form, it comes out in two directions. One is in cruelty, and the other is always its nus. In cruelty, the greatest Baal Peor of the last century is a place called Auschwitz. I can't go into this. Ramchal Shapira said the Nazis could not have done that if they were not the children of that religion. It was not physically possible to do it if they were Muslims. They could only do it because they had this belief to worship stench. To worship, there was no greater stench in history than the stench of Auschwitz, with the trains that ran on time and everything organized and everything with a shita. Everything comes under a deep philosophy. Everything is organized and everything is based on it. They worshipped and they glamorized the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of human emotion, sadism. So that is a Baal Peor on one end. On the other end, you can choose your pick. I'm looking at who's here. I'm going to go with Las Vegas, only because if I say LA or Miami or New York or San Francisco, I'm probably insulting someone. It's not St. Louis, Mike. Don't worry. It's not St. Louis. Halavai, you guys would have a little bit of fun over there. Baruch Hashem. But you see over there, you go to the strip. in Las Vegas, and you see in 1 mile, they use more electricity than the whole of Belgium, just to promote this Baal Peor of taking the lowliest instincts of humanity and making it glamorous. And boy, is it glamorous, and boy, is it exciting, and boy, will you spend money there. But that's what it is. I just want to say, because a little bit, it should be Lamaisa. For me, Menachem Nissel, the Baal Peor of my students of the last few years is Nivel Peh. I can't believe I'm saying this to you. It's so embarrassing to say this. Nivel Peh, when I was growing up, my least religious friends would be careful what came out of the mouth. They knew there was a thing called Kedusha of the mouth. And today, the idea, the Nivel Peh means the stench of the mouth. You say words that are lowly, that are now sung by a politician say it, and it's okay. It's not like you're saying it about Trump. It's fine. You can say those words. Ariana Grande will say it because it sells. It's what their teenage kids want to hear. They want to hear you say those words. And then from kids are saying it. And the Baal Peor has come into our own backyard. Just use this as an example. Finally, we can get back. And you guys, okay, the next few minutes of the class is all positive, and I'm finishing in 3 minutes, literally. How did this class begin? We began with the Gemara. The Gemara was talking about what's called Zivugim, or Partzufim in Kabbalah, right? The creation of man began with one, and then it split into two. It split into two, and we said that opposite comes in 2 ways. One is Achar, front and back, and the other is top and bottom. Now, when women get it right, which is our women, that opposite or that bottom is turned into what's called the Jewish home, which we'll get to in a moment. But when it's distorted, you have literally the 2 types of Avodah Zarah. The opposite, which is the Elohim Acherim, which is the Rambam, when the Rambam before, which I read to you a little bit, the original Avodah Zarah, which you can find a little bit in the Far East today, echoes of what it was once, that is the parts of what's called Elohim Acherim. That's the first time. That is face and back of face. That's Avodah Zarah, step 1. But then you have Rav and Shmuel, the other one says Zanov. The other Avodah Zarah is Baal Peor. That takes the furthest from the, you take it from the high, the furthest part of the human body, the lowest of the lowest. That's Baal Peor. So what we call classic Avodah Zarah and Baal Peor, those 2 things are the 2 Gemaras of what was Isha without a tikkun. Female, when it's left without a tikkun, either classic Avodah Zarah or Baal Peor. But when it comes with the tikkun, when the zivug is done karayu, then you have everything that is beautiful. Everything that is beautiful about this world and the next. And the emes is, the Goyim know this as well. Every single non-Jew knows there's nothing better than a good marriage. Every single non-Jew knows this. That if you, on your 50th birthday and your 60th and 70th and 8th birthday, you have someone that's with you that loves you, and they don't look at any other person except for you. You see them, you go to Miami, where are you guys? You see them, they're walking down the boardwalk with all the preachers there, and this old couple, and they just look at each other because they're still in love, and they're looking at the same eyes they saw under the chuppah. You got everything that's beautiful in this world. You got a zivug of Kedusha, the way it's supposed to be. And you got the zivug of this world that reads into the zivug of the next world. And that is what's called, why a woman says Shasani Kirtsainai, because I'm the vehicle that brings a bias, that brings everything that is truly beautiful in this world. And all I can do is left here in Yerushalayim HaKadosh is to give us all a bracha, that we should be zeicha, that the zivugim that we have bring to a bias of Kedusha, of joy and happiness and laughter. And that zivug of Kedusha should be the joy and laughter and happiness that becomes eventually the bias of the final tikkun, the tikkun of the bias of the Beis HaMikdash, where the male, which is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the female, which is Knesset Yisrael, can rejoice together, and Baal Peor and all the Elohim Achem will be in the garbage heap, will be flushed down the toilet forever. in the becoming of Mashiach, who will bring that world to its perfection. We should all be Zeichad Meher V'Yameinu. Thank you for listening. Good Shabbos to everyone. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu should give you all the brachos and all the kedusha and all the beautiful things in the world. Thank you so much.
Rabbi, Amen.
Thank you, Rebbe.